All right, everybody, welcome back. This is the end of the world of Michael and Stu.
I'm Michael.
And I'm Stu, and today we are talking about one of the most disastrous / famous cults of the 1990s. That's right, it's Heaven's Gate. We've had many requests to cover Heaven's Gate over the almost 2 years of the podcast, and here we are at long last.
I would say one of the most famous, more than just of the decade. I feel like.
Well, I think any cult that commits ritual mass suicide is going to be pretty famous.
Yeah. Once you commit, you're at least going to get some clicks years later.
Yeah, I mean, we've already...
It was the HBO documentary somewhat recently.
Right, which ironically enough, you watched, but I have not watched yet. I may watch after, although I did read Professor Benjamin Zeller's book, Heaven's Gate, America's UFO Religion. There will be a link in the show notes to that.
That's a better place. I mean, the documentary's fine. It's just kind of like, oh yeah, this is pretty wild. One of those.
Yeah, I mean, my thought was Benjamin Zeller is a religious studies professor, and I thought it would be interesting to have a little bit more academic insight into what people think about this group. That said, the book is a little bit dry because it's academic. It's very well researched, and he goes through a lot of different theories about how to understand the group and its foundations and its practices and stuff like that. But it's not chronological, so he goes thematically, and then he kind of bookends the story of the group's beginning and the group's end at the end of the text, which is helpful. But I could have. I guess one reason I kind of wish I had at least checked out the documentary, which I was aware of, but it was Thanksgiving week, so I was traveling and it wasn't blah, blah, blah. But it would have been interesting to look at some of the surviving group members' testimony. Does the documentary include any of that?
Yeah.
Like interviews with people who left the group or what have you?
Yeah, I mean, people who sort of, I don't know, the kind of people who are like, there's some who still see like some value in it, that aren't completely distanced from it, but obviously people who are very relieved to have not been in the cult at that particular moment. A lot of the testimonials come from obviously people who had gotten out or for whatever reason weren't around. Yeah, I mean, it's fine, but this seems like a more interesting way for the purposes of our podcast than that type of thing.
Yeah, totally. And so, the group culminates with its mass suicide on March 22nd through 24th of 1997.
Yeah, do you remember this?
Yeah, I think we talked about it last time. I remember it quite vividly. So I would have been about 15 when this happened, I think. And I was in my freshman year of high school, and I was actually on a family vacation to Puerto Rico.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, which was very beautiful, very nice. Or either I was in Puerto Rico or Florida. I was somewhere south of where I normally am. It was spring break. Classic family spring break to vacation land. And yeah, actually, I don't think it was Puerto Rico. I think Puerto Rico was the year before. I think this was Florida. But I remember being up on the roof of the condo complex we were staying in and looking at the Hale-Bopp Comet, because the day that they ended their lives was the perihelion, or it was the day that the comet came closest to Earth, essentially.
Yeah.
And, this was an unknown comet that had only been discovered a couple years before. And we'll talk when we get to the sort of, when we circle back to the final ending at the end of the episode about the comet and the role it may or may not have played in their decision to end their lives. But it was a crazy thing to see in the sky. It was like very big. It was like, oh, look, there's like a gigantic space rock flying through.
Like how big compared to like when you see like an airplane go by?
Bigger. It was the biggest comet since 1811. And I think it was also bigger and visible for longer than the Great Comet of 1811 had the record. and the Hale-Bopp Comet demolished that record. So it was, if you were not in a light polluted area, and even if you were in New York City or a relatively built up, you could still see it. It was
Yeah.
it was massive. Um,
I don't remember seeing the comet, but I do remember the story on the news. Um, Pretty bleak.
yeah, I mean, I remember pictures of the shoes because they had these Nikes that they all
Yeah,
wore.
and the uniforms.
Right. I don't think the news showed any bodies, but it showed their feet kind of sticking out
Right, right,
wearing
right.
wearing the shoes. And, this was not taken, I mean, it was taken seriously in that it seemed bad that a group of 39 people had committed suicide,
Right.
but their beliefs and the content of their beliefs was treated as just total insanity,
Of course.
which is understandable. Uh, but I think what this book that I read does a good job of showing is that, while yes, this ending point is utter madness, the group is actually a very American phenomenon, kind of flows directly out of the context in which it formed and in which it was existing in the 1990s, and out of the long American religious tradition going back to the various great awakenings of the
Mhm.
1700s, 1800s, and other, later developments, which I thought was helpful, right? Because the main thing I remember being emphasized when I heard about this was just aliens, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
Which is a very important part of their,
That they were going to be kind of picked up and brought away.
yeah, which is what they believed, but it has it has context that I was unaware of until later, and especially
Right. Me too.
not until looking into this book. So you don't remember seeing the comet, though. This was not something.
No, no. I just like
Suburban
sort of.
Ontario was just indifferent to the comet.
I mean, I mean, maybe not. I mean, I was. I guess I was
You were
probably.
wrapped up in like the Devils playoff run of '97, or
Yeah, I think it was.
sorry, I
It
don't
was.
mean to be
I mean,
anti-Canadian.
it was a big news story.
The suicide, you mean?
Yeah, but I think there was also an element of like the millennial side of it too, right?
Well,
Like
absolutely.
there were various sects and cults like claiming whatever was going to happen in the year 2000 and stuff, and I feel like it was caught up in that as well.
Yeah, I was a little. Uh, this is specifically memorable for me for a couple reasons. On the one hand, my family moved not long after from Connecticut, where I had gone to third grade through ninth grade, back up to Boston, where I'm originally from. I'm just doxing myself here, but so be it. Um, and I also went away to boarding school the following fall. So
Hmm.
when I was at boarding school, I was pretty much out of touch with the media for 3 years. Did not watch any televisions. Only watched major sporting events, which we were kind of allowed to watch, like the Super Bowl,
Sure.
or we were so our days were so regimented and planned, and we did not have the internet in our dorm rooms
Of
until
course.
the fall of '99. So I had
Mm.
like 3 years where I'm kind of culturally blind, so to speak. And that actually was very useful, because what did I do in that time? I read the great works of literature. I
Yeah,
like
one wonders if we could use a little cultural blindness with that now.
I played football. I learned to play the guitar, the bass, all these different, I did a lot of
Yeah.
stuff that has been an important part of my later life. But so this kind of is like one of those landmark events that I put in the great chain of landmark events of my life that we've talked about before. The first World Trade Center bombing,
Yeah.
the Waco disaster, the OKC bombing, right? I remember coming home on all those occasions when those events were unfolding, and like having the TV on in the family sitting room,
Right.
and just everyone kind of wondering what was happening. And this is sort of one of the last prior to my like my own monastic era at boarding school, because let's talk about the group a little bit.
Yeah.
So it's called by us Heaven's Gate, but that's actually the final name of a group that had several different names throughout its
Yeah,
lifetime.
they didn't get off to a great start with the names. I'm not gonna lie.
Uh,
Why don't you hit us with
so
that?
initially they were Human Individual Metamorphosis, or
Mhm.
HIM, which is a very 70s group acronym style
Yeah,
name.
Est.
Exactly,
Yeah.
Est. And even looking back earlier, there's a tradition of this kind of new age group that has a three-letter name that can also be abbreviated into a word. Uh, then later they were Total Overcomers Anonymous,
I love that name.
which is just awful, right? I mean, like both these names emphasize metamorphosis and overcoming, right?
Sure, that's a
And
good point.
which are the central tenets of the belief system, right?
Right, but eventually, like, it's a little too on the nose, and it's not really piquing people's curiosity in the right way.
Well, as we'll discuss, one of the biggest problems this group had was that no one cared, right?
That's right.
They really were not good at recruiting people. Heaven's Gate is a better name, I will say that.
It's a pretty great name.
Yeah, and it's really the internet that I think leads to the Heaven's Gate name, because they're like, they start. A lot of people identify this group as an internet cult, which is completely mistaken.
Incorrect, yeah.
They did have an early website by 1996, which is around when the internet really starts to pop
They got
off.
like a CD-ROM of Netscape, and we're like, let's get our cult on here.
Yeah, basically. I mean,
Yeah.
they were on Usenet a little bit prior to that. And the book goes through their various attempts at recruiting in various Usenet groups in which they are just utterly ridiculed. And no
Is this
one.
before the Heaven's Gate switch?
I think it's around the same time. Regardless, they explain their beliefs, and no one, and we will get into what those beliefs were shortly, but no one has any interest. It's all just snarky. I mean, I was on the internet from a pretty early age. I was certainly on not AOL, Prodigy in around 1991.
Were you on Usenet?
I was not much on Usenet, but I was on
I don't
CompuServe.
even remember Usenet.
I was on CompuServe starting in 1993, which was entirely text-based bulletin board style dial-up service.
And what was Usenet?
Usenet was earlier, but it was also just a bulletin board service.
Yeah, it probably doesn't work as well when it's just written out in front of you. And
well, no, it works fine. It attracts a very different kind of person.
Okay.
It was much more computer literate people, a lot of hardcore nerd culture, but you'll be happy to know, Michael, sports fanaticism was alive and well in the early.
Oh, thank God.
I mean, I remember posting about Tony Kukoc's signing with the Chicago Bulls and like what difference this would make now that Jordan had retired.
Interesting.
And that was the summer of '93. So,
but I do remember that one of my first experiences with the internet was when we moved to England.
Ah, yes.
And I would get remarkably homesick during March
so
Madness.
Try to keep. Oh, right. So
I still remember going to like
highlight pages.
Yeah, and like watching the scores unfold as the page loads.
Yeah.
Like the famous idea of like the naked person.
Yeah, exactly.
But it was like that, but for like Boston College at Duke. And I'm like, I can't wait to see this.
No, totally. I mean, for me, I also, another big thing, I think I've talked about this on pod before, but I also misrepresented my age because I was 12 when I was first on the internet.
Oh, wow.
And I would tell people I was 25. But here's the thing. I was precocious writer. So I didn't write with any typos, and I wrote in a sophisticated way because I was already reading Dickens or whatever. And people just bought it because there was absolutely
25. You sound like you're 41.
Well, there was no graphical component, right? I had no profile photo or whatever. Your entire identity was bound up in your ability to write, essentially. This led to me getting into some trouble, but deceiving comic book artists and writers and trying to get my comic book projects off the ground, basically.
All right, well, that sounds like an episode for sure.
I don't know. There's not much to it. I mean, nothing ever came of it.
I don't know. I feel like early internet could be an episode. And we can get into
for sure. I mean, I was certainly there for it.
But let's go back before the internet, for the founding of
so
Heaven's Gate.
Bonnie Lou Nettles and Marshall Herff Applewhite are the two founders, later known as
T and
Doe, also Bo and Peep.
Like they did get their marketing vibe. It did improve. you know. Tea and dough hits
That's
for
be- that's
for cult leaders.
that's
That
better
hit.
than Bo and Peep. And
Yeah.
but they also refer to themselves a lot as just the two,
Yes.
which I think is also good, and we'll talk about why in a moment. Nettles was a nurse. She was married, had a family, but her marriage was kind of falling apart. The first meeting seems to have occurred at a hospital in 1972. Applewhite had just been fired as a chorus director at a Christian university in Texas. They met in Texas, somewhere in the Houston area. And Applewhite had also previously been married, but his marriage had led to divorce, primarily because he kept having affairs with men during his marriage.
That can have often a terrible impact on a
Yeah, if you want your straight marriage to last, in general, no affairs, but gay affairs in particular in the early 70s, I'm sure were not taken particularly well. He was allegedly fired because he had had an affair with one of his male students at the college, too. I haven't seen any documents. No criminal charges emerged from that. So he's Applewhite was obviously bisexual, perhaps leaning more towards the gay side of the balance. He was a very talented singer. He trained to be a minister.
He sounds great. Have you listened to any of it?
Yeah. He was a good singer, and he had a good background in education in that. He had been in the seminary I guess we say, like the British say, in hospital. But he'd been in seminary, but had dropped out. His dad was a Presbyterian minister as well. Nettles also had a strong religious background. She was grew up in a Baptist tradition, I think in Missouri. And she was a little bit more, they were both also very into the New Age, right? And we've talked about the New Age before with the Atlantis episode, which I always am bringing us back to because it's so central and yet so under-listened to. The New Age is this sort of new complex of beliefs that emerges in the latter half of the 20th century. Very, very obsessed with like personal development, but often through the employment of alternative medicines or technologies.
Right. So kind of part of the evolution of sort of American hyper-individualism.
And
right?
Protestantism. I would agree with that completely. And tarot, yoga. It's also but a little bit more of a polyglot. It looks beyond just Christianity. So crystals become a big thing for New Age.
Yeah, this weird balance in a lot of these American New Age movements of like some form of destiny, but some form of like individual empowerment at the same time.
I think that's well said. Yes, exactly. So for Nettles, she was into theosophy, which we've also discussed in our hated Atlantis series. Theosophy was, of course, the religious system founded in the 19th century by Helena Blavatsky and others.
Of course.
Yeah. It's about these ascendant masters, these sort of higher order beings that can be reached through various spiritual practices and are kind of guiding the destiny of the individual. Very influential. So she met Applewhite. The context of their meeting is a bit ambiguous. Some people say Applewhite was a mental patient in a hospital she was working in. Others say no, Applewhite was just visiting a sick friend at a hospital she was working in. It doesn't matter because they instantly clicked, and in a non-sexual way. I mean, they have a partnership that is intellectually and religiously oriented. It's not a relationship in a traditional
it feels, you get this in the documentary too. It feels like they decide that they are on a journey.
That's right.
Almost instantaneously.
Yeah, they immediately click and are like, we are prophets and our destiny. They claim that they had met in a past life, or that aliens had given them visions of each other prior to their meeting. And they are both seekers. I think that's an important context for this movement. This is the mid-70s, or 72, 73 is when they get off the ground, right? And so you're dealing with the aftermath of the 60s, the sort of failed utopian projects, the Altamont and Manson murders of it all, ending the 60s, and the utopian dreams of the hippie movement. Not that that happened in like one fell swoop, but retroactively, that's certainly how. I mean, just a side note, and I think Manson is not irrelevant to this conversation. I think what Manson was doing was somewhat similar, obviously with a bit more of a devious edge to it. But I was Googling because the Manson murders happened the week before Woodstock. So Sharon Tate and the LaBiancas are killed one weekend, and then the next weekend is Woodstock,
Amazing.
which
I did
feels
not know that.
yeah. I've thought about this a lot because it's feels just so like what a crazy week, right?
Yes, it feels like it belongs in a movie, right?
Absolutely. And I looked it up and I was like, were people chatting about the Manson murders or the Sharon Tate murder at Woodstock? And on Quora, which is, anecdotal evidence
At best.
at best, people were saying no, they weren't, because Sharon Tate was a relatively minor TV star, even on
Hmm.
the Beverly Hillbillies. Certainly that's where my father knew of her from. But
Hmm. It was also a very LA event
absolutely.
in the immediate
Mhm.
aftermath. It was about like being frightened about being in
You
LA.
were a
Right.
Hollywood star, we all under attack, Steve McQueen's
Right.
carrying a gun, stuff like that.
Right.
Which I thought was just interesting because in our age of hyper space-time collapse, where something happens anywhere, we immediately know about it and
Mhm.
and are afraid of it.
And
And
have really strong opinions on it as well.
absolutely. Just look at all the bots that turns out are, guiding American politics from
Yeah,
Eastern
yeah.
Europe and Nigeria and India. Anyway, never mind. But I think it is important to think of like Manson and other groups like that in the context of Heaven's Gate, where it's like people. All right, so the hippie utopia, people are getting shot down at Kent State.
Mhm.
Nixon's in charge. Nixon's going to storm to
Well,
reelection.
and even with Manson, let's say Breaking Bad, right? Like the idea of groups like this was a fairly common thing, which is like potentially one explanation for we were talking just before we started this, where it's like they did just put on some little events in communities, and people would just show up to see what it was about. It wasn't instantly derided
Yeah,
as
people
something
had
that
especially in certain parts of the country. So in
yeah,
California, Oregon, on the
Oregon.
West Coast, they had at least people would give them a listen. But that comes a little later. Their first couple of ventures fail almost immediately. They open a bookstore where they're going to sell spiritual materials. It's called like the Christian Arts Center or something. Very quickly fails. This is Nettles and Applewhite. Then they open a kind of retreat center, which also immediately fails. And after these two kind of capitalist retail based visions don't work, they essentially take to the road and
Yeah.
start just driving around the country trying to recruit people to their belief system. It's
And they
probably
really do this. I mean, they really do spend a lot of time on the road, just
living in
sort of.
campsites,
That's
like
right.
just sleeping rough. They have a convertible too, which I think is kind of fun.
And I think it's an essential time for them too, because although they're obviously not being immediately met with worldwide import, I think it's this sort of cabin fever with each other. So they're feeding off of each other in a
Absolutely. This is
way,
where the ideas are getting
and where it sort of calcifies, where
absolutely. And I think On the Road, the Jack Kerouac novel, is relevant. This vision
Mhm.
of America as this land of expanse and highways, and that this vision, that yes, they're. I mean, it's interesting because ultimately
Yeah,
they're
it's the idea of the time that like there's something to be gained and learned sort of out there,
absolutely.
right? Yeah, away from your station, to be moving will sort of inherently bring you some sort of wisdom.
Yeah, I think that's well said. The thing about it, their religious movement is though they share these certain commonalities with more hippie coded liberal. I mean, they are quite liberal in a certain way. I mean, they're open to people of all racial backgrounds.
Mhm.
They're open to gay people at a
Mhm.
time when that was not normal, perhaps because of Applewhite's being himself
Yeah.
somewhat gay. But they're non-judgmental in that sense, but they're also very conservative in a lot of other senses. And I think this comes back to their fundamental rooting in Christianity, right? And I think the way that the Zeller book tries to explain this is to say that like essentially what they're doing is they're a fundamentally Christian movement that looks to ground itself intensely in materialism. And what do I mean by that? Well, essentially, they attribute anything miraculous in the Bible to as yet not understood alien technology. So, if Jesus raises someone from the dead, that's
But
not a,
not.
that's
Can I
not a
just? Can I just?
miracle. That's a technological achievement. Because he was actually an alien implanted in the womb of Mary.
I have to say, like at first blush, it just does. That doesn't sound like that bad of a notion.
Yeah, and I think another important
But you know,
background.
of all the explanations we have for how this happened, you
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
kicking it upstairs, right,
yeah.
to some sort of entity or species that we simply are not aware of yet, it's not about shout.
No, I agree. And another important background piece is, of course, Chariots of the Gods, the Eric von Daniken book, which we mentioned briefly in
Mhm.
our Lovecraft episode. Basically, the idea that all ancient achievements can be attributed to benevolent,
Right, right. And
ancient astronauts, right?
when it comes to their ideas about the Bible and miracles and all of that, it's like I can see someone who's looking,
Yeah,
right. That is a very calming and comforting notion. In fact,
yeah,
that like it's it's one it's one degree more explainable in a sense than just moving it to a full on deity. Like,
yeah.
oh, okay, I see. We do know that there is an outer space and a great beyond and an
And the
infinite
universe
universe.
is big.
It's so big. Okay, yeah, that sort of checks out.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. You can see that hooking some people for sure.
And I think, 2001, the Arthur C. Clarke, this sort of
Yeah.
any sufficiently advanced technology will be indistinguishable from magic. That quote that
Mhm.
is attributed to him, that I'm paraphrasing. But, this idea is definitely in there. And, sci-fi milieu is starting to emerge at this time. Another landmark text for them is just Star Trek.
Absolutely.
They
That's still
love Star Trek, right?
they got the uniforms, they got the ranks. It's amazing.
And just the vision of the Enterprise as this crew of like hyper intelligent but fundamentally benevolent people who work in
Hmm.
it as a team and do not have interpersonal conflict. They only have conflict when it's introduced by aliens, right?
Yeah,
Or by other external complications. This is what they model themselves on. And Michael, you're not a big Trek head, right?
I am not. No.
As you probably could have guessed, I have watched every episode of every show of Star Trek up through not including the modern shows, which I consider to be an abomination.
Blasphemies.
Yeah, I mean, not because they're woke or whatever, which is one objection, but because they're just so bad. And
Right.
to be fair, a lot of old Star Trek is quite bad too, but bad in a way I find delightful. And later sci-fi shows, like even Star Wars, to some extent, the Jedi, this order of, like you can see the
Mhm.
appeal. Later versions of Star Trek, Stargate, the movie and
Stargate.
the TV shows, very important for them. And then later, the X-Files. They
Mhm.
love the X-Files. And who doesn't?
Who does?
I love the X-Files.
Maybe the hottest couple in the history of television.
Not going to disagree with that. I never quite thought of it like that, but you're not
I
wrong.
mean, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous how sexy the two of those are.
Especially,
People
and I mean, especially when Mulder does nothing, Scully does all the work, and then
are.
Mulder shows up at the last minute. Is like, well, Scully, of course it was radio waves bouncing off the molecular chip the aliens implanted. I don't know, Mulder. Oh wow, Mulder, you were right again. I've been rewatching some lately, and it is.
Yeah, I've been rewatching too.
It
Wow.
is a very funny dynamic they have
Absolutely.
going. So the goal of Heaven's Gate becomes ascending to what they refer to as the level above human, right? The level above evolutionary level above human. And so through their ratiocination via this sort of alien technology hypothesis, Jesus and angels and other holy beings are all next level beings and are either benevolent space aliens themselves or are what they call walk-ins, which is like an alien spirit is implanted in a human body. And over time, the group will come to view themselves as walk-ins as well, although that is not the case initially. And the most central biblical passage for them, which I've included and will read in total, it is
Mhm.
from Book of Revelation, chapter 11. And Nettles and Applewhite see themselves or saw themselves as the two prophets who are spoken of in this passage. So I'll just read it now, and then
Yeah.
we can discuss a little. And I will give power unto my two witnesses, and they shall prophesy 1,260 days, clothed in sackcloth. These are the two olive trees and the two candlesticks standing before God, the God of the earth. And if any man will hurt them, fire proceedeth out of their mouths and devoureth their enemies. And if any man will hurt them, he must in this manner be killed. These have power to shut heaven, that it rain not in the days of their prophecy, and have power over waters to turn them to blood, and to smite the earth with all plagues, as often as they will. And when they shall have finished their testimony, the beast that ascendeth out of the bottomless pit shall make war against them, and shall overcome them, and kill them. And their dead bodies shall lie in the street of the great city, which spiritually is called Sodom and Egypt, where also our Lord was crucified. And they of the people and kindreds and tongues and nations shall see their dead bodies 3 days and a half, and shall not suffer their dead bodies to be put in graves. And they that dwell upon the earth shall rejoice over them and make merry, and shall send gifts to one another, because these two prophets tormented them that dwelt on the earth. And after 3 days and a half, the spirit of life from God entered into them, and they stood upon their feet, and great fear fell upon them which saw them. And they heard a great voice from heaven saying unto them, Come up hither. And they ascended up to heaven in a cloud, and their enemies beheld them.
Good gig if you can get it.
Yeah, I mean, is it? Sounds awful. You've got to be in sackcloth for 2,000.
It's a rough 3 days, but then you're on your way.
No, 2,003 scored days. That's like 7 years. That's a long.
Oh, I thought it was 3.5 days.
No. That's when they're dead. Prior to their death, though, they're going around prophesying for 7 odd years in sackcloth. But they do have cool powers, right? They can shoot fire from their mouths and kill their enemies. They can stop the rains. And then eventually the beast, the great villain, the Bible, will kill them. But they'll resurrect after 3.5 days, which I think is to differentiate them from Jesus.
Yeah.
So this becomes the center of their belief. They are these two prophets, T and Do, Bo Peep, the two. This is they, right? And so they start talking about how they expect to be martyred. Their enemies are going to find and kill them, and they're going to come back, and then they'll ascend to heaven on a cloud, which they take to be they'll merge with the alien mothership and return with the other higher order beings, right? So from this, it should be immediately clear there's an element of millennial apocalypticism in the group from the get-go, right? I mean, they're founding their belief on the idea that they will be killed in an apocalyptic tide-turning event that is part of the biblically prophesied end of the world.
It's like the classic ramping up of the thing.
Yeah.
Right?
And they're going to rise from the dead. It's going to be sick. And in this way, it's not that different from People's Temple, Jonestown, which we'll talk about, or David Koresh, who remember is working on his interpretation of Revelation when the standoffs are occurring.
We're definitely in a moment for this type of thing.
Right. I mean, Koresh will come a little later. I mean, that gets started in the 80s, but it's the same cultic milieu is what people describe it as. Now, one big difference between Jonestown or Manson or Waco, Heaven's Gate group is law-abiding for the most part. They don't do crimes. I mean, Applewhite gets arrested once for not returning a rental car, essentially. But
they end up like living together, just in like a suburban house.
Yeah. It's very they're not interested in violent confrontation with the outside world. They discuss it at various points. So just to talk about the they travel around for a couple of years. They get one follower during the first year and a half of their movement, who after a month is like, "Wait a minute, I have a husband and kids. See you guys later." She abandons them. And it's not until early 1975, so this is 2 years into their driving around, essentially, that they have this first meeting in Studio City in LA, where around 80 people come to the group meeting, which they've advertised but via posters, flyering, essentially. And 25 of those people join the group. But
amazing percentage, actually. That's a great conversion rate.
Yes, but as you'll see, like a lot of people come in and out of this group. This is the problem with this group is it has terrible retention rate over long term. So even when they have converts, and part of this early on is because they are so disorganized. Basically, T and Do pair everyone up, and they pair. They're before we do that, their belief system is pretty important to understand. It's like they say you can ascend beyond the level to the level above human, right? And they say that this is physically achievable in the world through lifestyle and different processes that you
largely abstinence, right?
Well, that becomes the main one, yes. But they're basically saying you don't have to die, you don't have to, you can do this in this world, in this life. And yes, it becomes an ascetic movement where you reject sex, drugs, and basically any form of extraneous corporeal pleasure that serves to bind you to your body, right? And this is not that different from a lot of early Christian movements. Like, we've talked about the stylites, right? The guys that sat on the pillars to pray to God. And those, so many monastic orders. The Jesuits take a vow of poverty. All these orders take vows of poverty, where and priests famously are not supposed to do what? That's right, have sex. Mm-hmm. And as we know, that doesn't always work out. But it always work out. Right. And it didn't always work out for the Heaven's Gate members either. And oftentimes they would pair up people deliberately with people they thought they might be attracted to, and then send them. Yeah, as a test. It's more meaningful if you're a gay guy and you're paired off with a straight woman. Yeah. Oh, wow. How am I going to resist having sex with this person I
just got a best friend out of the deal.
I have no attraction to. They would pair them off as a test. Exactly. They pair gay people off together. And then they would send them out and be like, go spread the word. Mm-hmm. But there would be no central way of staying in touch because they didn't have a base of operations, because Applewhite and Nettles were just doing the same thing. They're all just kind of chaotically traveling around America. And they have a rough idea. All right, we're going to meet at this campsite in Colorado in May of 1976 or whatever. But if anything happens, someone's in the hospital, we can't get to the campsite. Our car got a flat. You get there 2 days late, they're gone. And then you have no way of finding them. And so there are stories of people getting separated from the group and taking months, if not even years, to meet up with them again, putting out personal ads. Are you part of the HIM movement? We're looking for you. We've been, So also a lot of people were recruited by these people sent out who had never met Applewhite and Nettles. So there's just these splinter group all over the country. And it's kind of wild, right?
Well, it's very different from many of the other ones that we've talked about.
Right. Well, their charisma is important to holding people in the group, but they're not relying on that charisma to actually recruit people. So after a year of this, in late 75, they're like, wait a minute, this is a nightmare. We should start moving as a group. We should start living together. And thereafter they do that. And they also stop recruiting. They close down. They face inward and face away from the world. And so very little is known about the group's movements over the next 20 years. Yeah. I mean, there are people that come in contact. There are people that come and go during this time. And in the book, and I'm sure in the documentary, there are some interviews with people. But it's a little bit of a black hole. So one of the last recruitment moments, they get a bunch of national media attention because 20 people in Oregon drop out of their lives and join their group. And people are worried. They're like, where's my husband? He was just here. And even Walter Cronkite does a report on it on CBS News. What happened to these mysterious 20 people in Oregon have vanished? Were they kidnapped? Were they, have they joined of their own right? But it doesn't go anywhere. It isn't a doomsday death. They aren't murdered. They aren't kidnapped. They've left of their own free will. And the word that is used to describe these groups like EST, Human Potential Movement, People's Temple, is new religious movements, which are really common in this era. And the focus on UFOs for Heaven's Gate does give the media a hook. A UFO group, so that they get, but it doesn't go anywhere. And so they turn inward. And April 1976, this is a year after their first big recruitment drive, they assume more direct control. And
it starts becoming much more about teaching their followers, right?
Yeah, and the metaphor that the group members use is the class. They say, we're in the class, T and Do are our teachers, or we're in the crew, and T and Do are our captain and admiral. Yeah. Nettles seems to have been the real leader for the initial 10-year phase of the group. And then, unfortunately, she gets cancer and passes away. And she had a long struggle with cancer. She first had it in her eye and had one of her eyes removed. Then it went away, and then it came back. And so in 1985, she dies. And this really throws a wrench into the whole
thing.
Transcending to the next level above human, because it's like, well, aren't you going to be martyred? Oh, you just died of cancer. You're not martyred at all.
And aren't you one of these two?
Yeah, and now there's only one.
Still, yeah.
It really throws a wrench in the whole plan. So
you'll never guess which way they go with it.
Well, she's just ascended to the next level. Yeah, turns out
she's already there.
You can actually just go through death. That's also an acceptable level. And this sort of starts to pave the way towards the mass suicide as well. Because it shows...
Yeah, it's very hard to imagine, at least from what I saw, that this goes this way if she doesn't die, I think.
Yeah. Or even if he dies, I think it's also quite different.
Yeah, maybe. Good point.
It's hard to know, right? So she'd been ill for a while, and eventually, this is when Applewhite starts adjusting the beliefs. They stop talking so much about the two and the Revelation passage. They start talking more about Star Trek. Applewhite is Captain Picard or Captain Kirk. And Nettles is the admiral who's above him because she's already ascended to the level above human, right? Mm-hmm. And now they start to say that there's a bunch of ways you can get to the next level. You can be picked up by the spaceship, which was the original vision. You can die naturally and ascend out of your body as Nettles had. You could be martyred in a Waco, Ruby Ridge-esque government persecution.
Sure, why not?
Which we'll talk about in a second.
And then there's one more.
Yeah. By suicide. Ooh.
Turns out, suicide is an option.
So these new pathways start to open up, and it is getting a little bit more ominous. After being totally inward-facing through the time of Nettles' death, in the late 80s, they try to recruit again. And they do bring in a few more people over the final 10 years of the group, but we're talking 30 to 50 people. Yeah. There had been hundreds of people at least circulating in and around the group in the 70s heyday, but by the 80s, the membership had attrited rather dramatically.
Yeah.
And the cultic milieu of the 90s contributes to their mass suicide. The fact that the Ruby Ridge standoff happened, the fact that Waco ended in a fiery death, for 83 people or whatever, they don't necessarily sympathize with the extreme white supremacist at Ruby Ridge or the esoteric beliefs of
but there's
Koresh.
A sense it's all happening kind of vibe.
We're all on the same page. We all recognize the world is fallen and we need to leave. Mm-hmm. So even though we don't think, white supremacy is good or whatever, we get where they were coming from. They're right about the big vision. They're wrong about the specifics and the details.
If they listened to T and Do, they would have been on the right path.
Absolutely. Another person who's important for them is the Unabomber. which I think
Of
is
course.
really interesting. Unabomber Manifesto is published in late 95. And though it's funny because they're very pro technology, just alien technology, right? Whereas the Unabomber is very anti-technology, so it's like
Right.
they're diametrically opposed, but they're kind of
Yet it can still make sense. Yeah.
pointing to the same thing somehow
Yeah.
anyway, which I really like. Zeller mentions Unabomber, but he doesn't point out that sort of hilarious
Mhm.
discordant congruence, right? As I said earlier, sci-fi shows of the era, X-Files, Stargate, these become also shows like Sightings and Paranormal Unsolved Mysteries
Yeah.
episodes. All of this, which is really bubbling. I mean, this is the stuff of my childhood,
Of course.
Oh my God, an episode of Sightings is on. What the Roswell tape has been found. Oh my, the alien auto.
Area 51.
I
Yeah,
just
it really
ate
was
this
a moment.
stuff up as a kid. I just
Yeah.
could not get enough of it. Not even necessarily thinking it was real, but I remember when the first X-Files episode came on, which I watched, I thought it was real. I thought it was a documentary show. Very quickly, and again, I was 11, 12, whatever. It's tricking these cartoonists across the country, but at the same time, I thought the X-Files was real. So maybe I wasn't quite as smart as I thought I was. In any case,
Yeah,
all
we're getting to the point of something very real.
right, and their recruitment efforts are valiant but fail. They do
Mm.
a satellite broadcast that's like 12 hours. It's very costly. And that's the stuff where you see Applewhite talking. A lot of
And
the
if only they had Twitch, it could have been so different.
I mean, absolutely, right? Or even just TikTok or
Yeah.
even just Twitter or just any like they just waited. But they also, do a book. They publish a book of their beliefs, which is sells so poorly that the company's just like, take these back, please.
Like the band that has 5,000 CDs in their garage still.
I mean, I am that band, Michael, but not 5,000. I'm not that foolish, but I've still got a couple hundred records here and there from various projects I've supported over the years. I actually have a song from my band that is vaguely not about Heaven's Gate, but it's about belief in extraterrestrial.
Mhm.
So I'm going to play that for the outro music today.
Great.
Anyway, all of this stuff is pointing to the fact that we're getting to the end here, and Hale-Bopp appears around this time, 95. It's discovered. It becomes visible through late 96 and early 97, and there's a big conspiracy theory that there's a spaceship following in the wake of the comet. And it gets on Art Bell and becomes, those digital photos appear on early message boards that allow for such things, the ones you have to wait for the bitmap to download.
Yeah.
And it turns out, shock of shocks, they've all been heavily photoshopped and are completely fake. But this is like the early days of that, right? Like, is this the first right?
So Heaven's Gate's eating it up.
Well, they're interested in their final message. They say whether or not the spaceship is there, it doesn't matter. But yeah, they're aware of the spaceship. They're aware of the spaceship talk. They all would have been listening to Coast Radio with Art Bell. I mean, of course. Now, another big thing Zeller in his book emphasizes is that, like, they were kind of waiting for a crackdown that could precipitate their taking steps, like what had happened at Ruby Ridge or Waco. They were waiting for the government to come and martyr them. But the government just didn't care.
Right.
Like, no, in fact, no.
Because they weren't doing anything.
That's the thing, is like and for Zeller, the failure of anything to happen is what forces them to commit suicide.
Really?
Yeah, he's like, well, we've got to take this into our own hands. Like nothing's happening here, people. Which is hilarious, because this is sort of like damned if you do, damned if you don't scenario, right? Because it's like, well, would Koresh have died in a hail of gunfire and flame without the government? Probably not.
Yeah.
Right? Like the Ruby Ridge people just kind of wanted to stay up and be racist on that mountain or whatever.
That's right.
And yet in this case, the government's like, oh, you believe a space alien? Great. So, well, your taxes are in order. See you later. The other thing is they don't have sex, so they have no children, right? in both Ruby Ridge and Waco, there are children that are endangered, which is what spurs the government to act. These are
Sure.
ascetic people like the Shakers, right? They don't have sex. They don't believe in reproduction.
Yeah.
So they're fundamentally not a threat to anything.
Mhm.
Um,
And they're not armed.
well, they had some guns actually,
Oh, really?
but nothing, nothing illegal.
Yeah, yeah. Okay.
As I said, they had all these massive recruitment drives in the 80s and 90s, and they got like one or two new members. So by the time of 97, there's 39 committed members and a couple other people that used to be members they're still in touch with, they're on good terms with. And they decide, look, we've got to get to the evolutionary level above human. And Applewhite in 95 broaches the idea of mass suicide for the first time. And most of the people in the group are fine with it. They're like, well, as long as it's dignified, they connect themselves to groups like, again, ancient Masada, like the long tradition of religious minorities committing suicide. But again, there's no Roman army coming to kill you. It's very odd, right? And I think the rumors of the spacecraft and the Hale-Bopp Comet kind of force Applewhite's hand. He's sort of like, look, there is this comet. It's kind of giving me a sign. It's now or never. And as I said, the date of their departure.
And he also doesn't have that much more time. I mean, he's old.
He's old. There's rumors he may have had cancer, not confirmed. A bunch of members have undergone chemical castration in the last 5 years. So they just to get rid of their ability to feel.
Extra homework, I guess.
Yeah, well, apparently the recovery was not great also. Like,
I'm stunned to hear it.
There was complications that they weren't thrilled with. So they get ready to go. They get their away team patches, implying that they're a part of a Star Trek away team that was just visiting Earth for 25 years or so. They all have identical Nike Decades, apparently a very desired shoe by sneakerheads.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure. I guess it
was discontinued soon after and is only mostly known because of this.
I guess in this moment.
No, but now
the slogan "Just Do It" really hits for these people, right?
Yikes! Brutal, tough but true, fair but true, harsh but true. I don't know. There's some saying I'm missing here. They alerted people who they were still friendly with that this was going to happen. And they did it very methodically. In groups, they took poison, barbiturates mixed with alcohol in applesauce, and then they put bags over their heads, and their bodies were covered by a purple shroud. And
they're often lying together, right?
They're lying in beds next to each other in a kind of dormitory-like setting in this mansion. How they got the mansion was never clear to me, but some of the members had been quite wealthy.
Yeah.
And it's in Rancho Santa Fe, I think it's called. It's outside San Diego, which is a odd place for this to happen. I think of San Diego as being like the like the opposite of a sort of like the anti-California.
Right.
The naval base and the sort of. Anyway,
and it was kind of met by the media of like just like like they weren't particularly well known.
No,
right? It was,
no.
What happened here was kind of the through line.
And some of the members survived and were left in charge of the Tela Foundation. Tela stands for the evolutionary level above human, if you couldn't guess. And they have their website, which I think is still maintained to this day.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you can still go to it. And it's not, as far as I recall, I haven't looked at it in a minute, the writing is not that compelling, That's my biggest beef.
It seems like it never was.
No, that's kind of my beef with this whole thing, is like, I'm sure Applewhite was charismatic if you were in his presence.
Mm-hmm.
But with a lot of this stuff, when you look at it as text, you're kind of like, well, what the hell is this?
Right. Which is why it didn't catch on in the early internet phase, right?
Or in the pre-internet phase, right? When you couldn't see Applewhite on television or on Twitch. Imagine Applewhite on Twitch, man. I mean, Applewhite has a legendary look. He has those hypnotic, mesmerizing eyes, which many people
there's something almost alien about him, actually.
Yeah, and I mean, his eyes appear kind of yellow in videos I've seen of him, which is cool. It's very metal. And they all die. and are discovered, the authorities are alerted, investigation is uncovered, but everything was left in complete order. Like people's names and socials were written on their bodies and stuff.
Yeah.
I mean, and they all had adopted these like Neody, Geody, Nefodi, Nephrodi. One of the most distasteful aspects of the whole thing for me is the Ode. Everyone has an Odie
Yeah, the
name.
naming with Odie at the end.
Oh, I hate it because I just keep thinking of that that bastard dog from Garfield, whom I previously described as the only good character in that whole strip. But now I've turned on him as no, Odie rules. But just the Ode, something about it really, maybe because I hate the word grody, you know, and I kind of it touches a nerve in my aesthetic sense that makes me despise it.
Well, I'm sure they're looking down while they're flying around, and they're duly offended.
They're planning to zap me. So that's Heaven's Gate, Michael. You know, anything I missed that the doc maybe hit on?
No, I think it's pretty comprehensive. I mean, I do think that it you know, again, these things that we talk about this in terms of the end of the world in the podcast, but it is these different forms of insisting that there is meaning somewhere else.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Like,
seeking.
That's right. They're like you can sort of relate to when you do view the world as kind of humdrum at best and truly heinous at worst. Right. And the idea that there exists this technology, right, that could explain all of this away and make sure that you know that like you can do this, you know, like you live right, you take care of your body, and like you're gonna eventually move on to something that
you're gonna travel the cosmos.
Yeah, like it's the classic thing of like we have this totally incredible place that we are already on, you know, but once you're on it in the way that we're on it, it can become hopelessly quotidian
and disappointing. Yeah.
Right. And so even if it's only 39 people, you can sort of see the path through to this type of thing, really.
Yeah. Yeah, it's
if there are any cults out there looking for someone to take a shot at, I guess I just made myself a mark. But...
Well, I think this was kind of a hard ep to write just because unlike with a lot of these doomsday cults, nothing happens.
No.
Until they decide to end their own existence.
And even that is barely a happening, right?
I mean, it's so orderly and
it's a formality.
Yeah.
It's the same way that they're kind of like reaching for this event, this sort of non-event, like, oh, there's a comet nearby.
Yeah, and some of the people's family members are surprisingly accepting of this.
Mm-hmm.
Like they're not thrilled their relative did
Well, again,
this.
I think that's part of it because like for people who are probably family members of this particular cult, it's like the shock value wears off. Everything feels, I mean, not normal, but consistent for such a long time. But it's like, yeah, that's what Greg does. He's in this little group. It's where he lives. You know, there's nothing, like you said, with these other things. It's either violence or salacious,
or if the family are in conflict with the group, like with Jonestown. That's what precipitates Jonestown's destruction, right? So I don't know. I thought it was interesting to go back into the cult milieu. I like these episodes.
Well, it's also just interesting because this one like didn't have to end.
Yeah,
you know, I mean, the other ones that we were talking about, like
they end in violence.
Exactly, right. And often by like an external force. These people just decided it was time.
Yeah.
And it is time to end this as well, I suppose.
And it's time to end this episode. We haven't decided what we're doing next week, but I'm sure it will be something fascinating.
Yeah, we'll tease it
as we always do. And in the meantime, if you like the show, you can follow us on the podcatcher of your choice. If you really like the show, you can leave us a rating and or review on said podcatcher. You can also follow us on Instagram at The End of the World WMS, where we post scintillating reels of our quips and quandaries. I don't know how we can follow this up, but I'm gonna have to dig deep and
we'll find a way.
We'll find something. But until next time, this has been The End of the World with Michael and Stu.
I'm Michael.
And I'm Stu, and we will talk to you real soon.
What are you looking for? You can't find the key. Turn back from the door and come towards me in just a little.